Is a recession a mild one necessary in order to stop inflation?
Some recessions are short and mild. Others, like the Great Recession of 2007-09, are long and severe. In either case, they're bad. The economy shrinks, producing fewer goods and services. People and businesses reduce their spending. Workers lose their jobs. Home values decline. So why would the Federal Reserve risk a recession right now? Because they're worried about something they believe is far worse: persistently high inflation. Inflation is the rate at which prices are rising. And starting in the spring of 2021, the prices of just about everything, gasoline, groceries, clothes, appliances, housing, started rising more rapidly than they had in decades. Inflation causes businesses to raise their prices to account for the higher cost of supplies. Workers seek pay increases so they can afford those higher costs, which in turn force businesses to raise their prices more to cover the higher wages. It all creates a vicious cycle that Fed officials believe must be halted. But to do that, they have to push the country to the edge of a recession by aggressively raising a key interest rate that affects what Americans pay for auto and business loans, credit card balances, and mortgages. Fed officials hope they can keep the economy from falling into a recession by carefully executing their policies to produce what they refer to as a soft landing. But history has shown that is difficult to pull off. To understand why we're at this point, you have to go back to the last time the United States experienced high inflation, the 1970s. Fed officials failed to respond aggressively, and inflation became entrenched in the economy. It was only tamed after the Fed pushed interest rates up to nearly 20% starting in 1979.
People who want to work but can't find jobs are part of today's other bad economic news.
But that effort took several years and carried a heavy price: 2 recessions and an unemployment rate that jumped to over 10%. The Fed learned its lesson and successfully kept inflation in check for 4 decades. Then the pandemic struck in 2020. A severe but short recession caused by the lockdowns led to trillions of dollars in federal rescue spending. The pandemic also disrupted the production and shipment of goods around the world. So when inflation started accelerating in the spring of 2021, Fed officials and many economists thought it was just a temporary reaction to reopening the economy. But prices continued to rise quickly throughout 2021. Then, Russia's invasion of Ukraine supercharged inflation by disrupting global oil supplies. Inflation has jumped around the world. Fed officials began raising a key interest rate in March. Their goal is to slow the economy enough to reduce inflation without going so far that they stop all economic growth and cause a recession. Fed interest rate changes are a crude weapon that ripple through the economy. Like using a shotgun to hit a target, there can be collateral damage. The biggest threat is job losses. We're already seeing slowing job growth in the United States, although hiring remains solid. But inflation remains high, and that means Fed officials have more to do. There are 3 ways this could play out over the next year or 2. The best case scenario is Fed officials raise interest rates just enough to tamp down inflation, but not so high as to cause a recession. The worst case involves the nation falling into a deep recession that lasts more than a year and costs millions of workers their jobs. Inflation is pounded down, but it takes several years for the economy to fully recover. Many economists expect a middle scenario, a mild recession that lasts less than a year and causes limited job losses. The Fed's policies result in neither a soft nor a hard landing, but still return inflation to normal. It loses the battle, but wins the war.